All right. Trying this thing again. 10-4. Hear me. Anybody? Still nothing. I think I'm registering audio now. I mean, it's 2020. I should have audio, right? Hear me? I restarted. We're having a bad day over here. You got me now? All right. Thank you, Luke. You can classify me as a boomer. For those of you who don't know, it's just my birthday and I'm turned 45 years old. So that's me, Captain Boomer. So I'm going to start this whole thing over. I had a fancy image at the beginning and I think that broke things. Now we're good. All right. Surprising, there's still over 1,000 people still here watching these, watching this nonsense. So we are going to move forward here. Thank you, Sherry. So anyways, why am I so excited today? Today, we are launching FlowPatrol. I have been working on FlowPatrol for 3 months. The team's been doing a great job. And what is so exciting about FlowPatrol? Well, let us dig in before I use more of your time. The good thing is I believe we're unlocking some alpha here for everybody. And so this could be some exciting stuff. So let's talk about the SpotGamma evolution. Trace. What was Trace? Trace we launched a year ago. It's crazy. It's been that quick of a year. What is Trace? It shows you the real-time buy-side positioning in the SPX index options. Now, if you don't trade with Trace and you trade futures or ES or you're scalping 0DT S&P options, you are trading blind. Why? Because 60% of SPX options are 0DTE. So we track in real time how those positions change. What is the buy side doing? Are they buying and selling? Where are they buying and selling? How does that impact the flows? We then up the ante. In March of this past year, we launched Equity Hub. Equity Hub, the update shows you what we believe to be the buy-side positioning, and this is our proprietary algo that decides this, the buy-side positioning in single stocks. AMD I was watching here is ripping up to about 180. That's where this negative gamma comes in. Very interesting area for AMD as an example. So what does FlowPatrol have to do with any of this? FlowPatrol is a AI-driven report. And what this report does is it looks at all the daily changes in our buy-side positioning. We call this our synthetic open interest model. And we write this entire report for you based on those changes. So if you've seen unusual flows before, or tweets about position changing and all that, half the time I would say that stuff is pure nonsense. Why is it nonsense? Because maybe it is a fund or maybe it's not. Maybe someone said it was opening and it wasn't. It was actually closing. But what are you getting in FlowPatrol? You are getting a detailed breakdown of the biggest positions that changed across all U.S. options. You're getting breakdowns of interesting volumes, unusual position changes. Where are people buying deltas as a hedge? Where are people buying short-term positions? A lot of gamma. Where is their Vega coming in, right? Where are people buying VIX options, for example? Where is someone buying a sneaky amount of huge upside calls or downside puts that could really spike if the market starts to move, if the underlying stock starts to move. I've had a lot of coffee today, a lot. Biggest premium trades. Are those always the interesting ones? Sometimes, right? Or how about this? Actual unusual positions. We wrote a little algo here that determines unusual flows in sneaky names that a lot of us may not be familiar with. I see some names on here that would know, like a Luke Piper. But for example, Paz, silver name, sneaky flows in that, for example, Trip, which I think is TripAdvisor. These are the types of actual unusual moves, right? Unusual position changes that you're going to get. And we tell you whether positions were opened or closed, short and long, again, based on our proprietary strategy. So you know exactly what's happening on that buy side positioning. And again, why do we focus on buy side positioning? Is because we believe those are the flows that are going to be dynamically hedged. So if you think about that, there's two reasons why this matters. Number one, right? Dynamic hedging is what we're about. How do market makers hedging flows move stocks? That all makes sense to everybody, right? And if that doesn't make sense to you, we have a ton of resources at spotgamma.com to help fill this in. So you could say, okay, market makers sold calls to some fund. Let's look at an actual example. I highlighted RIGT this morning in the unusual flows report. So if we scroll up to the top here, right here, right? What is this RGTI? We've been talking about the stock a little bit as an example. It's a quantum computing stock. Stock seems to be up a bunch. I don't know when I'd want to short it, but look at what somebody did here. Somebody, and this is a $16 stock, so this is a pretty sizable position, 40,000. What do? They sold this Friday's calls to open, 46,000 of them. And then our algo determined about 48,000 puts were bought. Now, we don't know the specific trade that took place, but we know what the net positioning is that we see tracking changing on a daily basis. So it's pretty safe to say that roughly 45,000 calls were sold, roughly 45,000 puts were bought for this Friday, suggesting that somebody with some pretty sizable pockets, right, bet that this stock is about to go down. Now, maybe that was a hedge against some stock. Maybe that was an outright position. We do have to fill in some of that with extra analysis. But the point is here, that's a legitimate big position put on a very popular meme stock for this Friday. Now, that's a position that you really wouldn't get anywhere else. Same thing with this PZC as a utility company, I believe. So a lot of interesting things there. Intel's in the news because of the CEO under fire, right, with Trump and all that. So those are the biggest position changes from Friday to today. Now, every day, if you go to spotgamma.com/flowpatrol, you scan that QR code up there on the top left. Every day, we're going to send you this new report for the next month. We love our SpotGamma subscribers. We're going to give this to our SpotGamma subscribers forever. We're going to integrate this into our platform at some point. But right now, anybody can get this report for free. All you got to do is scan the QR code, go to spotgamma.com/flowpatrol, and you can get a whole bunch of interesting information. What else is in this report? You can see top premium trades changes by ticker, which I think is interesting. We also built this sector analysis, right? And what the sector analysis is it's showing you the biggest delta, gamma, vega changes across all these individual sectors. So you can see how people are responding to big moves. So interesting what happened, for example, in the crypto space is we saw some people selling deltas into that space, monetizing some positions, for example, is what you would see there. You can see the percentile. This is based on currently the last 10 days worth of data. That data set will expand. So these percentiles are there to put all this information into context. Same thing with this heat map where you can see the biggest delta positions. You can see very big delta, negative delta positions in crypto, for example, a lot of gamma in equity ETFs, and just a little bit of vega there as well. So you're getting the feeling of exactly how positioning is responding to big stock market changes or big moves in the market. I think this report is going to be incredibly valuable after situations like last Friday or 2 weeks ago now, after FOMC, right? We get these big rate moves, and then we get a bad jobs data report, and then suddenly Twitter lights up with every hot macro take you could come up with, right? And God bless the macro people, tough position to be in. What I want to know is how did people actually position to that, right? Did the smartest hedge funds in the world go out and buy calls or sell puts? Like, how did they react to that flow? What sectors did people react to? I know healthcare is a big one right now, right? Are people buying or selling healthcare when stocks like UNH are down or whatever else it might be, right? So you can break that all down now by sector. And get an understanding of not just the size of the position, but also that percentile really gives a lot of context to help out. So you can see here those sector flows, healthcare, very big right now. I think a lot of that is UNH because of that big positioning. But again, it flags that sector. It lets you know people are actually buying here and it's moving. So we're going to be excited to watch that stuff. We're also going to be really excited to know when do people finally want to start buying puts. Right now, they don't want puts. That's a core of our SpotGamma notes this morning. If you watch the OPEX effect with our friend Jack at Excess Returns on YouTube, we broke down why we're worried about this being a zombie market. And that's a really concerning position if you're a put buyer, right? Because that's a market where the market just does nothing. It marches forward, vol gets crushed, really kind of a dull market, burns your puts to death. This is one of the charts that I'm most excited about. We call this our heavy day trading algo flow. Now, why is this interesting? There's a lot of stocks. I'm looking mainly at NVIDIA and Tesla, where you will see 3, 4, 5 million contracts trade a day on some days, right? And you will oftentimes see people flag these cheesy stock tweets, right? That will say huge flows in NVIDIA, huge flows in Tesla, $1 million of premium. It's all nonsense. It's all algo, HFT, day trading, right? And now this report can actually document that for us. So what we're showing you here is the total volume of a name. For example, NVIDIA traded nearly 3 million contracts on Friday, but the actual open interest change as far as retail and buy side that we estimate, again, this is an algo that we've written, is about 300K. So only about 10% of actual volume in NVIDIA translates into open interest. You can look at UNH, it's a very similar thing, right? Only about 10%. Why? Because there's so many people chasing stocks now. So a lot of times we conflate massive volume with massive position changes, but so much in this market now, as a nod to the SPX being 60% more of zero DTE, so much of that flow is just kind of noise day trading. It's here one day and it's gone the next. And so what we're doing here is we're breaking down saying, okay, these are the names that are actually getting material changes. There's something interesting actually happening here. And that's what this heavy day trading algo flow is doing. Now, our team has done a great job documenting how to use this report. There's all sorts of resources tied to it. If you go to spotgamma.com/flowpatrol, again, you can get this report for free. And we're going to be doing that through the remainder of August. This report is going to be improving, and we're making changes and updating it as we go. This is the latest and greatest data you can get. As far as I know, we are the only entity that has this type of data. Maybe a Goldman, maybe a Nomura would have it, but it is certainly something that was proprietary to us, and we really believe we are the market leader here now in this positioning and estimating this positioning, and you can't get this information anywhere else. And so again, go to spotgamma.com/flowpatrol. It's free. You can scan that QR code on the top left. Got a little excited. I can see on my images there with too many exclamation points, so I broke the little thing there. So a couple of messages on the report link in the email. We will check that out. SpotGamma team, if you're listening to that, can you just check out the report link on the email? There's a couple of people saying they're not getting it. So let's just bring up this page and we'll make sure it all works as we look at it here today. The good thing about all of this is Boomer Brent is not in patrol. All right. So here's your FlowPatrol report. All looks like it's pretty good. Pop your name in here and pop in the get free daily FlowPatrol report. Now, every morning we have to send out a new report, right? So today you're going to get the report, which documents Friday's position changes. Tomorrow morning at around 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, you're going to get all of the position changes from today. So you can see how people responded to the crypto market, how people were reacting to changes in NVIDIA and AMD and the like across all U.S. interested names. Obviously, if you're a SpotGamma subscriber, I know there's a bunch of questions on here. We're going to be doing more of this data behind the scenes as we move into the fourth quarter. We have a whole bunch of really exciting products that are going to launch around the October timeframe, and that will incorporate a lot of what you're seeing here in FlowPatrol. The exciting stuff about FlowPatrol, it was kind of the most entrepreneurial, fast way we could get this information out to everybody. Also, we know everybody loves to see those PDF-style reports out of the banks and the likes. And so we said, you know what, let's give the people what they want. And we also encourage sharing. We really would appreciate if you send this to your friends and colleagues and your co-traders, share the report on your Discord channels, whatever you got. We are open to getting this report to go fast and wide, and so that everyone can get access to the information. And again, this information will be available until the start of September, essentially. Right. And you should be getting the report into your email. You will get a link in your email from spotgamma.com. Make sure that it doesn't go to spam or junk email or anything like that. And that's where you're going to be getting your daily report. Even if you are a SpotGamma member, you got to make sure you get that email link, and that will allow you to download the report that you see here today. So if you go to spotgamma.com, again, /FlowPatrol, enter an email, and you get the report that you see here on my screen. Yeah, for members, the report is not yet on the website. We're going to be adding a link to the website here in the coming days. So pay attention to that. But if you are a SpotGamma subscriber, again, just pop it in, pop your name into that list as well. All right. We are going to be back tomorrow morning analyzing some of these flows. I'll be going through the flows in a little bit more detail. I will also be trying to start without any tech problems. So that is a big update for us. Ron's asking about what SpotGamma level gets this FlowPatrol report. I'm going to be very clear about this. Anybody right now, SpotGamma subscriber or not, anybody can get this report for free. There's no hook. There's no gotcha with this thing. SpotGamma.com/FlowPatrol. You'll be getting this report through August. We're going to be doing webinars starting off every day this week. We're going to be doing our OPEX webinar on Wednesday, but we're going to be talking about and breaking down the positions that you see in the report here in a little bit more detail tomorrow. Today, obviously, I had a few tech issues, so I'll get that going. So anybody, right, that puts their name in will be getting this report for the next 40 days. The FlowPatrol Randy should not be case sensitive. Yep. So spotgamma.com/flowpatrol, and there should not be any trick with the links. No tricks with the dates. Tomorrow, again, you'll be getting tomorrow's report. So as long as you sign up today, you'll be continuously getting that report until we have finished to set it up. So Harddeep's asking questions. How do we use some of this data? So let's break that down a little bit here and just find out some of the things that are interesting to the report. So when we start off here today, now I've given enough background, you can see that what the AI is determined are from the analysis what the biggest positions are. And so you can see in here, you can see which ETFs and single stocks may be dominating the flows. We all know that GDX and Apple, for example, have been huge movers. Apple's been going crazy over the last few days since they basically said they're going to invest $300 trillion, some made up number over the next few years. So here it is, huge number there. We can ignore this put wall from May. So I'll delete that out of there. So there's Apple, right? And then what was the other big one? GDX that we mentioned before. Both of these have had really very large moves, almost mirror image moves of each other, right? And so what's interesting about this is we see unusual Vega activity. Vega activity is usually options that are obviously more, not usually, they are the options that are more sensitive to changes of implied volatility. And so it's interesting that people are buying. It looks like buying Vega in GDX, right? They're getting long vol, but in Apple, it shows high negative Vega, which is interesting. Negative Vega could be associated with people selling calls. What are one of the biggest and most popular position changes in Apple, or what do people tend to do? They tend to own Apple, and then they tend to sell calls against it. So what that suggests to us is the stock is up a bunch, right? And if we look at the actual positioning in the SpotGamma system now, what do you see above here? You see positive calls, right? Or positive gamma positions at higher strike. So what does this mean? This means that if I'm looking at the SpotGamma data, and you can only get this data if you're a SpotGamma member, but what the report is showing me is, hey, Brent, shows high negative Vega. That's interesting. Well, what could that mean for Apple? Someone's selling options, right? Because it's negative Vega position. So if I go into Apple on Equity Hub, I can see that indeed there are these short calls above. So this is not somebody selling this week's calls, because those wouldn't have a lot of Vega. This is somebody selling likely a month, maybe 2 months out calls, right? And you can see exactly in here. Oh, yeah, look at this. Traders have sold calls. I'm seeing the market maker position in my Equity Hub, right? That's telling me the dealers are long calls. So that positive gamma above suggests that people likely think Apple has made its move, right? So to me, that's a very valuable signal. If I'm long Apple, and in gold, you could do a similar thing. Let's just check out the GDX positioning. You would think it would look a little bit different, and indeed it does. So if we want to look at open interest, you can see here around kind of the at the money. So if we look at the levels and live prices, you can see right around 57 is where GDX is trading. And you can see there's all negative gamma positions around here. See that? There's long puts. Dealers are short puts, right? So traders have bought puts in GDX. Looks like there's some long calls as well from the trader community, because dealers are short calls, short puts. That's negative gamma positioning. And in this case, obviously, we think traders have been buying some Vega and GDX, maybe betting on a reversal. So that's really interesting. And then you can see there's a lot of bearish flow and spiders. So you take that into account. And then not only that, we have the crypto showing strong bearish sentiment. So at the top here in the index positioning page, this is just about SPX, SPY, and the VIX positions. Some interesting VIX shifts going along here. What looks like some people closed out some call positions. That's what BTC means in those calls. So even though total OI may have changed up 20,000, we see that positions have been getting net closed. And then if we scroll down here a little bit more, we can see the biggest single stock position. So there's big Mara trades. Mara is, I believe, a Bitcoin kind of market maker, or They run the mining company, right? So you can look at those positions. Somebody sold a giant slug of Tesla puts for this August 105 puts. They sold these to open. I don't know what those things are worth, but you're talking about. So, so you sell 75,000 105 puts that expire in 5 days. That's a kind of a funny trade. Very probably not going to go in the money, but I don't know. You're collecting to make that bit. Really interesting trade here in TSLL, which is the Tesla levered positions. You can see it looks like somebody sold the 100 puts to buy the 88 puts. So those are kind of interesting positions as well. So when you go through here, you're getting a breakdown of those top positionings. And then what you're seeing in this table is what are the top position changes by delta. So delta, as the Greek, is showing you the options that are likely more in the money. And then the second thing we do here is we are attempting to match spreads. There's a lot of spreads that trade. And so, for example, the spider one is an excellent one to highlight, right? Because you can see here that the buy OI went down 31,000 and the sell OI went down 31,000, right? So these action is C means these positions were closed. So that's a call spread that looks like it was likely closed. Of this really big size that matches up. Now, sometimes you see weird strikes in here. Those weird strikes for spiders, just to make a note of that, are likely flex options. So that is not a error in the report. You will see oftentimes flex trades like that will go through in the spider. So if you see that, that's what those are. But we're doing our best here to match up positions for likely spread. So again, here's a QQQ that looks like a likely spread there as well. And so that's what's getting matched up. So when you can go through here, you can make a lot of sense of what's happening in the delta space. Gamma is highest for short-term options at the money options. So these are likely short-term bets in here in the gamma positioning field. This was obviously dominated by spiders over the last trading day. So we'll probably adjust this a little bit to show more non-spider activity because spider activity tends to dominate that gamma space due to the proliferation of zero DT options. And then last but certainly not least is the Vega table here. The Vega table is interesting because if you start to see people wanting to hedge big moves, buying a bunch of puts, selling a bunch of calls, or maybe doing the opposite, like getting long, looking for convexity, then you will see that pop up here in something like this report. For example, this is quite an interesting trade. I think Meta 800 calls for September. Now Meta's trading obviously at 768 right now. So that's about 5% out of the money that option. And that's a pretty sizable position, right? 3,000 contracts there that expire in about a month. So that's a pretty bullish bet there. If you look up here at this put position, you can see that somebody sold these puts to open in Google, right? The 190 puts expiring in March. So that's a pretty aggressive trade as well. And we think that is an opening transaction. So you're getting a lot of interesting information from what the biggest traders are doing in this space. And I think that's particularly interesting after a lot of news events or meme type things happen, whatever it may be. So that's giving you an extra level of real insight. The premium trades, simply what are the trades that had the biggest dollar value change? So it's like if I bought or sold contracts at X dollars, that's what this is showing for you. So this will tend to be dominated by sometimes by some of the index products. We've suppressed the SPX and NDX from this list because the SPX and NDX, obviously, they're huge value swinging there, and that's why we broke that table out separately. So in here, you're getting, obviously a huge Bitcoin position here, BITX. I don't know if that's a leverage one. I think it is. Lily is in here, which is an interesting one, right? Because Lily was just getting crushed on Friday. That stock is bouncing now around that kind of 640 level. So it's interesting here that somebody had owned these 780 puts, right? And they close that position now. It looks like some type of a put spread maybe. So again, you're seeing these big position changes. Now, I mentioned that we broke out SPX and index positions because they have such large notional values swinging on a daily basis. If we didn't pull them out of all those other tables, then you would likely see that whole first table set just dominated by those types of trades. And so here we're breaking out the top 20 SPX and NDX index trades. Now, the top trades in this case, what we are doing is we are creating a ranking system based on the amount of delta, gamma, and vega that traded. And so that is how we are deciding what positions to put in this list. And it was a pretty quiet day on Friday in terms of big position changes. But I fully believe if you see a big 10,000 lot hedge or 50,000 lot hedge, some kind of whale come in, that will be reflected in this. And obviously that could be an extremely interesting position. And then I had mentioned this before, the top unusual positions. what this specifically is doing is it's looking for those names that aren't likely to come up on your radar, right? It's those names where it's like, not a big options volume name, but man, there was a big open interest change. So you'll see that in the buy OI or sell OI position. So total volume is how much options volume traded for that name on the day. And then was there a big buyer or seller there? What do they do? Buy something to open or sell something to open? So you look at something like this PRTA. It's only a $7 stock, at least the 750 strike, in a fairly sizable 25,000 lot position. Looks like some were bought to open there. And so what you end up seeing is, again, stocks that wouldn't normally catch your radar seem to be popping up on this list. And I think that, again, for idea generation is really important, right? You want to know those names that fall into other people's radar that they don't see, that typical people wouldn't see unless they had this data. And then you can really figure out maybe where the kind of unusual bets are, right? Coming from some big hedge fund that maybe has done the analysis and understands something really interesting about, a really cheap stock like a seat. RSP, I think, is the equal weighted S&P index. So that's quite an interesting position there. Looks like someone closed up a rather large put position, which is interesting. So check that out for those unusual positions. And then one of the things with the early beta feedback that we were getting was, hey, like, this information is great. Put it in some context. So what we're doing here is we're flagging symbols that have unusual percentile volumes, right? So the only thing showing up on here is when it has a very high or low percentile of delta, gamma, or vega. So you can see these are the names that are really getting, that unusual flow as well. RGTI is one that obviously is big on the list here. With that big negative delta trade where someone sold calls to buy puts. So obviously that's about as big as it gets that we've seen in RGTI. Apple, again, is really unusual from this Vega positioning. Looks like I think people are selling quite a big of call. So that's a big signal. And then when you look here at GDX, you say, okay, not a lot of delta, not a lot of gamma, but there is a bit of Vega coming in here. Positive Vega, 97th percentile. Again, this is a short amount of time frame that we're measuring this against, only about 10 days right now, but that time period will expand. And so you're just getting, again, the ability to kind of understand what is significant. Checking out some of the questions here. Again, if you're not a SpotGamma subscriber, no problem. Go to spotgamma.com/FlowPatrol Report is free. You get it for the next month. And that's it, right? I think there's going to be a ton of alpha baked into this report, right? Ton of interesting information, trade setups, trade ideas. How are people reacting to news? CPI is going to come out tomorrow morning. How do people react to that, right? Well, Wednesday morning, you'll get the report that'll tell you exactly that. You have NVIDIA earnings coming up at the end of the month, Jackson Hole coming up at the end of the month. There's trade deals every day. How do you know whether the export tariff that was launched on NVIDIA and Apple or NVIDIA and AMD were good or bad? I have no idea. Did people buy calls or sell them, right, in those names? Well, that'll probably show up on the report here tomorrow if it was done in any kind of significant size. And that can really help you to wade through this information and this news. Just checking the questions here. Randy, what's the best way to use the report to identify day trading opportunities? It's a great question, right, Randy? Because if you come into the report and you're looking at some name that has a lot of overnight movement, like an RGTI. I mean, let's just check out this stock. I mean, this is clearly the big one that's coming up at the top of these reports. This is a really interesting name because of that big position change, right? And it's a short dated position name. And so if you've been watching this stock, right? So sometime on Friday, somebody put on that big reversal trade, right? So now that I know how the positions have changed, I'm also realizing that there's some big entity which may have essentially shorted this stock with pretty decent size. And this is a stock that obviously has been moving very well over the last several months, right? You can see it's got quite a high here, right? So now that I know that there's these flows that could potentially help to really push this thing down, so that could be kind of an interesting setup. If I know people are doing things like buying big UNH positions, right? If they're selling calls into like a crypto space, right? Then tomorrow I may look for those positions to indicate that maybe crypto's overbought, for example. So there's a bunch of different ways you can look at these reports. A big one would be, for example, when we were looking at this report after the Fed jobs data, right? And the market was down 3%, and you just didn't see any big put buying, for example. So there's a whole bunch of interesting data and information in here. What I've found watching this over the last few weeks is you get a great sense of interesting flows, but then you'll get that one or two pieces of information that is like, okay, this is really interesting. This is a name I wouldn't have watched before or really come up on my radar. But now that I'm seeing that positioning come in um, with a high fidelity, right, that funds were buying or selling this stuff, um, then it really highlights an interesting opportunity for me to go and trade or go and check out. So again, spotgamma.com/flowpatrol. You can sign up for this report. It'll come in free every single morning. And a great, that's right. It's a scanner idea generation. We've seen a lot of trades show up in here where other people will put in Discord or tweet about some big position change. And if you don't see that reflected in this report, it likely means that it wasn't a hedge fund or a big retail trader that did the trade. There's a whole bunch of flow that is just like a market maker trading to another market maker, or a bank, does something with a market maker. It's flows that aren't necessarily about expressing an idea like, hey, Tesla's going to sell way more calls. Let me go buy a million calls. Or about a hedging flow, right? It's like one market maker trading with another market maker. That's a heck of a lot of what you're seeing out there. It's a lot of just noise and stuff that may not be actionable. And so I know a lot of you that are watching here, again, probably understand the concepts of dynamic hedging flow and gamma squeezes and all that other stuff we'd like to watch here. But even if you just put that whole thing aside and say, okay, this report's going to tell me when some big hedge fund came out and shorted Rigel or RIG or RGTI. I keep saying it's Rigel. It's not RGTI. Rigetti, or someone just sold a whole bunch of, I mean, these are really deep out of the money puts that expire this week, but that from a sentiment perspective or just an informational perspective is extremely valuable, I think, right? I mean, there's segments on CNBC where they sit around and they go, hey, someone just bought 10,000 of these calls, in this weird name that expire in a couple of weeks, right? That's essentially just doing the same thing, right? It's telling you where, maybe you want to call them the Sharpies, right? Or the bigger positions are doing something interesting. And imagine what happens if they buy a big position right before earnings or right before some other type of event, right? Or they react to earnings by layering on a giant position, right? These are the types of things I think that can be really helpful. And again, UNH is one that came up because obviously the stock has just been getting pummeled. I know there was a politician that just bought a big chunk of this thing, right? And so the stock is finally looks like it's finding a bounce. Big intraday reversal there, obviously. But overall, this thing's been getting pummeled. And so, like, is this the time? Well, when you scroll down here and we start looking through the flows, what do we see? We see some positive deltas in Eli Lilly. That's positive premiums in Eli Lilly, which is interesting. So, are people buying calls in that name? Looks like there's some small call buyers there. And then what about UNH, right? Well, we saw here before on the sector flows, if we scroll down, that the healthcare was getting pretty positive flows. So many here. It is healthcare, right? $260 million of deltas. To get long delta, you have to either buy calls or sell puts. So you're getting some information there that's popping up. Now, I mentioned UNH before. And you're saying, okay, Brent, why doesn't it show up on any of the big reports at the top? It's because we didn't see a big hedge fund come in and buy some 5,000 lot or some extremely large delta gamma vega position, right? It didn't happen. So what does it seem like what's happening in there? It seems like a pretty good amount of volume at 338,000 contracts and a total buy side open interest change of 39,000. But the fact that it's not on the rest of that page there tells me that a lot of what's probably happening must be retail or smaller positioning, right? Small positions over a whole bunch of different contracts, as opposed to one fund coming in saying, I'm buying 10,000, 1 month, 25 delta calls, in which case you'd likely see that on a report. So what the takeaway here is like, hey, if you are seeing people tweeting about or making noise about some big flow and you don't see it on the report, it's a suggestion, or it implies that whatever that big flow was probably noise and maybe not material, right? Because it wasn't, in our estimation, a buy side entity putting on that big position. So hopefully that is helpful and hopefully that makes sense. And I know we've gone a bit over time. And so I want to thank you all again for taking the time to join me today. We're going to be back tomorrow. Audio is going to work from the jump. Video will work from the jump. So we'll make sure that's going, and we'll just dig a bit into more of the report. We'll do a fresh analysis again. That should be about 10:30 tomorrow morning. And again, spotgamma.com/flowpatrol. If you get the report or put your name in, get your email, get the report every single morning at around 8 o'clock, and you'll have all this latest information. It's free again until the end of August. All right, that's it for me. I've said too much. Thank you all for sticking with me through all of this. Again, spotgamma.com/flowpatrol. If you have any questions, you can email us as well, flowpatrol@spotgamma.com. If you have some of those questions, you can also get support, info@spotgamma.com. So we will see you tomorrow, and we will see you on Wednesday for the OPEX effect. And we will close out with the beach, Pedro, just for you. Hardeep, you are welcome. Jack, you are welcome. Let's roll with the video, see if that one works. Oh, I broke the video. All right, no video. Tomorrow we'll do the video. Today you just get this, which maybe then you want to delete your Flow Patrol reports. All right, we'll see y'all tomorrow.